So welcome back to the Rod Shop channel here with us at Saxy Rod Shop. So today we're going to actually, this next couple of days, we're going to bring you along on what I would call a good how-to video. We've had this Chevelle in here off and on a couple times before. We've done a vintage air on it. We've done Sniper, EFI Sniper 2 fuel injection. We've done a Ride Tech front and rear suspension package on it. And probably the last thing, I guess, that the customer's decided to upgrade is he's going to be converting his manual steering over to power steering. And we're going to bring you along on a step-by-step of that. We're going to go over all the parts that are required. It's kind of a package deal. We can put this together as a package. And this is something that you can do at home in your garage with just simple hand tools for the most part, other than maybe the alignment after you're done. So one of the things you're going to be needing, what we do is we're a dealer for Borgeson Universal. They're back on the East Coast, and you can do this as a package. We offer this. You can give us a call. We'll help you walk through what you're going to be needing. Every car will be slightly different depending on the motor, your alternate or power steering bracket. But I just opened this box. This is going to be the power steering. It comes with a warranty card. As you can see here, it's very nicely packaged. This is going to have, on this one, we're just going to go with, because he's wanting to keep the traditional look, a traditional GM power steering pump. Now this one has the keyway on it for the pulley. So you always want to just make sure that if you don't buy a package deal, well then you're going to be having to hunt your parts. So another thing that we offer here is these pulleys. These are a steel pulley. Of course, we have available aluminum, but this is a GM style pulley, has the keyway in it, and this is a press-on also, or slightly press-on, then it has the nut to hold it. So this is one of the things you're going to be required to have on there. So there's the power steering pump. We have the pulley. You're also going to get a new steering box. And it's a complete box. These are new boxes. And it's all there. It's going to mount back in the same location as the manual. So you have the box there. Comes with its little warranty card and some information about your box. You're going to be needing the hose kit. Now this will have, one hose has both ends already on it. It'll have your second hose for your return, and that's the cut to length, so you can flip it however you want. Now, you're going to get the new fitment arm for the box. That'll be part of the package deal. And then on this application, because when we did the vintage air earlier, we used the Allen Grove style brackets for the compressor and the alternator. So you also want to think about the fact that you need to make sure that all your bracketry coincides with each other. So we stuck with Allen Grove, and that's what we have here. They're probably some of the best economical brackets on the market. Now, comes with this hardware, complete set of instructions, and a diagram, a picture diagram. So the bracket's pretty simple. It's just several pieces. But one of the things that we run into a lot when people buy some of this stuff is one of the first things they do is they take this out of the box, they paint it, and then they go to bolt it on the car. Well, you need to take these and fit them first, pre-bolt everything up, fit it to the car, because over the years, these cars come with a different motor in them, or they've had something changed. It's not exactly the year model you think it was on the engine, or the castings had shifted a little bit, or an intake may have an aftermarket intake and some of the spacers might need to be adjusted, or you may need to chamfer a radius a little bit for just to sit flat. So always pre-fit this to the pump, pre-fit it on the car, and make sure that your pulley lines up like you want. And then it's a little aggravation, but then take it back apart and then paint it. That way, if you do have to open a hole up or grind on it a little bit, you have that you're not dealing with after it's painted. But again, like I said, it has all the spacers, hardware, comes with a few washers in here to use as a shim, everything there. So those are some of the things that you're going to be needing to know about. And then on this one, you can see the steering shaft here. So we're going to end up reusing the steering shaft, but it comes with a replacement half of the rag joint that will now fit the power steering pump, the power steering box. So this will go down in there in place of the old rag joint and bolt up to the new box. So those are some of the things that you're going to need to know. And if we run into any problems while we're doing this, we're going to be sure and point those out. And then also some little bitty pointers that we do, just things that we've learned over the years and stuff like that. So stay with us and we'll get this thing with power steering here in no time. So when you're dealing with doing this conversion, whether you get it from whoever you get it from and you get all your components, one of the things you need to think about before everything's bolted on the car and then you find out that something's not right is go ahead and take and like verify that your fitting in the pump and your hose fittings match. Make sure they're compatible. You don't want to have all this in and bolt it up under the car and then come back and have to take it off because something's not right. So what we're going to do, we've got this hose kit out here, and you'll notice that they even provide you some of these little brass adapter fittings. Also, these are actually a flare fitting. So some of these pumps are this valve that goes in here, pressure valve. They could be inverted flare, they could be for a traditional flare fitting, or they could be a O-ring bump tube type fitting. So you just want to compare and verify that your fitting, the threads are the same on it. Make sure that that's going to go in. Let's see, is that the right one? See, we may already have an issue on this. Here we go. Get the right end on it. So you just want to make sure that the threads are compatible. There's not a burr on something. Worst thing, one of the most aggravating things you can have is when you're up under the car and there's a burr on something or the fitting won't start. So that screws in. This one is actually a flare fitting, and then they have you a spare here to go in your box if you need it, in case you get your components from different locations. So those are some of the things that you want to double check right there. And then when we go to press this pulley on, we'll kind of give you an idea of what kind of tool you may want for that, and where some of these items you can rent at a local parts store. So when you're doing this, one of the tools you might need, or you are going to need, and you can rent these, is a pitman arm puller. And they're pretty simple. This pitman arm was pressed on here, and then this goes around it, and you just tighten it up, and it pops that loose. But what we ran into on this one, and this is some of the stuff when you're working with some of these older cars that's common, is these are the steering box bolts. And you can see how pitted this one here is. It's basically no good. I'm surprised it didn't break off taking it out, because it hasn't been in there, or hasn't ever been out, it looks like. This one's not in bad shape, but what we're going to do is we're going to reuse these thick, heavy steel washers. We'll reuse those. We'll clean them up on a wire wheel, maybe poof can them with some black paint. But we're going to go get us some fresh bolts. This one here, you can see how thin it's rusted away. So, and how big in diameter that one is. So these bolts are the original bolts. and they're just not going to be safe to use. So we're going to get those. But these are some of the things that you'll run into. So just be prepared while you're doing this at home in your garage that you may need to run out and get some more bolts. Okay, so when you're starting to do some of this stuff, one of the things I like to do, I just call it precautionary measures or something like that. But just when there's the possible chance of interference fits and machining flaws over the time and stuff like that, I like to actually use a little anti-seize and put just a little bit. Now this, one thing about this, if you're not familiar with this anti-seize, this stuff will get, you're just going to touch it and it'll be all over you. But I like to put just a little bit on the shaft itself and on the keyway, so that when you go to take this apart at some other date down the road or whatever, it'll just help it keep from seizing on there. And then also make sure you get your pulley on the right direction. Just line your keyway up. And it should go on there. And then of course they come with a lock nut. The power steering pump itself did, but I'm kind of old school, so I still want to put a drop of just some blue Loctite on there. You don't have to get too much on there, but we'll do that. And then we'll use Tommy's little impact here. And you don't need to over tighten this. That's one of the reasons you're going to do the Loctite, is so you don't have to over tighten it. And sometimes that nylon and those lock nuts will come out or whatever on you, so the Loctite will allow you to not have to worry about it. It's just a little overkill. And then just bump it down till it's tight. And that's all you need. So now what we're going to do is Tommy's going to get the brackets out here, and he's going to read over these instructions. And this is his first time doing a lot of this. And he's going to mock all this up. We're going to fit this to the motor, verify that our pulleys line up, and that we don't have to do any grinding or trimming on the brackets, as I said earlier. And then once that all is done, we'll pull these back off, and we'll get them painted. We're just going to paint them with some black Krylon, and then we'll come back and put them on. Now, one of the things that we ran into on the steering box here, as I said earlier, the bolts were bad. Well, I couldn't find any of the correct bolts here local from any of the suppliers, so we're just going to use some regular bolts and go ahead and get it bolted up to the frame. You want to verify that your threads match and all that, and they are the right length. And sometimes when you get a replacement bolt, if you'll notice, these factory bolts have an extra length of thread on there, where your traditional grade 8 hardware bolts won't have that. So that's why we want to get the correct bolts, and we'll get them on order. They just won't be here today. So that way we can get that mocked up, and we do have the right bolts. And another thing too is our new rag joint. Now that we have it out, you do want to verify that the splines are correct for your box. You hate getting all that together and then find out at the last moment. And Borgeson's real good about shipping all this stuff out correct, but it still is a good idea just to double check. So he's going to get these instructions out, mock it up on the pump. We're going to get that bolted on, and then we'll come back and kind of go over our next step with you. Okay, so Tommy here's got the bracket system pretty much mocked up. He's getting ready to stick it down in the car. Now, there's so many variables on these power steering pumps. This is one of the later model style pumps. Has the triangle shaped can on it. As you can see here in the drawings, some of them had the round with the vertical snout on it there. So it is critical that you read your instructions completely on this and really pay attention to the spacers, because there's so many different size spacers depending on the application. And one of the things, this pump that we had actually had a stud in it back here, and with a nut on it to hold it together. So, and it even tells you that if your pump has a stud on it, that you'll need to take this out, and it tells you which spacer. So he's got this mocked up. You can kind of see how it's going to go on the motor, and this is going to go down on the on a old school small block Chevy, this is going to go down in those 2 front lower motor mount holes, or what I call motor mount holes from the old days. And this has a later model style water, or the water pump on it that has a threaded boss on it. So that's where the adjustment deal will go with one of these 2 spacers. I can't remember exactly which spacer it is that goes in there, but that's where that will go, and that will be your adjustment. So what he's getting ready to do is he's going to put the pulley back on here, and then we're going to get it down in there and snug it up with a wrench, and then verify our belt alignment, and then we'll pull it all back off. And now that we didn't have to do any little grinding on anything to get it to fit or clear, then we will bead blast these parts in the bead blaster and paint them black, let them dry overnight, and then we can start putting this on permanently tomorrow. Okay, so as you can see, we've got the brackets on the pump, and the pump's sitting down in here, and it's just loosely, it's actually bolted up like it's going to go. And what we're actually wanting to do is we're going to take a straight edge. You just want to make sure it's straight. This here is a 16-inch steel ruler, and we're just going to put it across the face of the power steering pump pulley and go down towards our crank pulley. And remember now that we're on the face of the pulley, so we just want to make sure that it lines up with what would be, say, the face of a 2-groove crank pulley. And it looks like we're pretty much right on the money. So now what we'll do is we're going to pull all that back off, go ahead and clean and paint the brackets, and then we'll put it back on there, and then we'll start on the installing the steering box. Okay, so as we were talking about earlier, sometimes you're going to get these little brass adapters and stuff. Every application might be slightly different depending on whether it's GM or Ford or stuff like that. But in our case, being GM, what we did is, let's take a look here at our box. We'll get these caps taken off. So some of these boxes are going to be machined for O-ring, what they call a bump tube, or stuff like that. And in this case, as you can see, that's kind of the case of it here. It's just going to, the factory OEM application of this box would have had a nipple on the end of the tubing with an O-ring on it and seated in there like so. But in our aftermarket world and stuff, we don't always have those applications. So what we're going to have to do, and they provide you with the items, is as you can tell, our hoses are the flare fitting, so they won't seat correctly down in there, but they do give you the items that you need to make them seat. And that would be these little brass adapters here. As you can see, they're machined. They look like they're all the same diameter. So these will go down in, the shoulder will go down in that hole. If we can get it down in there correctly. Like so. The other one will go down in there. And then that's going to give our flare of our hose something to seat against when it's tightened up. So just pay attention to things like that, or you're going to have this all together, get it started up, and start having some seepage or some leaks. And now's the time to figure that out now before having to do it all inside the car. Okay, so we got the brackets painted and got the pump back on. We got our, Allen Grove gives you a recommendation for belt length. We have that belt on order from the parts house. It'll be here shortly. But one of the things you need to think about too, though, when you're looking at your belt, and you'll have to come around here to see this, but you can see how close you are right here for this location. So make sure that you get a belt, like push your pump all the way in and measure your belt accordingly if you choose not to use the recommendation. And what's going to happen though is the recommendation that Allen Grove gives you is based on steel pulleys, and some of the aftermarket aluminum pulleys are slightly different in diameter and stuff. But you want to make sure that you have room for belt adjustment, because you only have so much room right here before you start getting into your steering box. So you want to measure with the box all the way in, get it as tight as you can, and then when you pull it out for some adjustment or for tightness, that's what you got to deal with. Now you can see here though, we also have the box on. We're still waiting on our new bolts, factory style bolts to come in, so we just use some regular bolts to hold it. He has a rag joint on here, and what we will do is, one of the other things you need to notice is these rag joints are splined like the stock ones with a set screw. Well, you don't want to tighten this set screw down just anywhere on the input. So the set screw is really designed and meant to tighten down on the flat spot of the shaft. So you'll line that up, and that's where your set screw will go in there, and then the shaft will come back and bolt back together, and it'll be just like a factory deal. Basically what has changed on this is this end of this here going to the power rack. So once our belt gets here, and we'll double check the length on that, and the power steering belt is on the inner groove, and then our alternator will be on the second groove. And now the alternator belt will go around the power steering also, so there'll actually be two belts that have contact with the power steering, because in a hard turn situation it'll have a little bit of load on it, and you want that extra belt contact if possible. And then your compressor will go to the outer groove. AC compressor belt will go to the outer groove. So next we're going to rotate the steering box all the way to one direction. We'll count the full revolutions to the other direction. We'll split that in half, and that's pretty darn close to what we call center. And then we'll make sure our wheels are still straight, and we'll put the pitman arm accordingly to line up with that. Now we will still have to have this thing, a front end alignment done on this, and that's where we'll get the fine tuning of that right and left turn. But we'll get all that done, get the steering shaft connected back up with the steering wheel as straight as it can be. Again, that'll be readjusted when they do the front end alignment. So when the belts get here, we'll check that. We'll move on to the next step of starting to put in the little brass adapters and start putting our belts on there. And then we'll start topping it off with fluid. We'll turn it manually back and forth to each direction to kind of air bleed it typically. And then we'll get it fired up and let it run with the pump. And then we'll be going from there. Okay, so as we said early on, we're going to point out any issues that we run into when we're doing this, so that you'll have a better understanding of what to expect or what to be looking out for. So as I said earlier, one of the things you need to be cautious about is your belt length. And they give you, Allen Grove for their bracket, they give you a recommended or a recommendation on belt length. And as you can see, as we pointed out earlier, we had very minimal area between the pulley and the steering box. And of course, these boxes fit on different applications. The bracket will fit the engine in different applications. So based on your application, this gap may be slightly bigger. And what we're running into is, by using the recommended belt length that they say is a suggestion, the pump won't rotate in far enough to get the belt on it. And if we go to a longer belt to get it to clear, and what's happening is the drain tube or the return tube on the back side of the power steering pump, your low pressure return hose nipple, is actually hitting our block. And so this particular canister on this pump, whatever its original application was, is interfering with the corner of our block. So that's one of the things that you could run into. That's not going to happen on every application, but you can see here by looking at this drawing. I'll put my glasses on so I can see it with you. Is early model pumps were the snout style usually, And you can notice that the return tube is in different locations depending on the year model and the application. The actual pump itself is basically the same and always has been. The bolt patterns and the pressure fitting is basically the same, but that return hose nipple was installed in a different location. And then on these triangle shaped cans, you can see the same thing. There's different locations for that. In our particular one, it just happens to be located up here towards the center coming out, and that's not allowing us to rotate it in far enough. So we actually have another canister coming, and it's going to be one of these right here, whatever they had in stock, and we will change that canister out onto the pump, and that will allow, and it's putting the return nipple all the way over here to what I would call the driver's side, or the left side of the pump. And that will allow us to gain more adjustment inward so that we can actually get the recommended belt length on it. Because if we went to a longer belt to get it on, well, then we would actually run out of an adjustment to tighten that belt, because we would be hitting our steering box with our pulley. So those are just little things that we're actually experiencing, and we do this pretty regular. On a regular basis, and we don't always have this issue, so I just wanted to point out some of the issues that you could run into. It's not a major deal. You just may have to change the tank on the pump. Okay, so as we were talking earlier, when the pump was on the car, we weren't able to roll it in far enough to get the recommended belt length on the pulleys, because the tank, we just couldn't roll the pump in further. And the reason being is this return hose nipple was hitting the edge of the block. So what we did is, as I showed you on that sheet, there's multiple cases available, and we just got ours in. UPS just showed up. We're opening this up right here with you the first time. Let's see if we can. Now this is a CPP brand. You can get OEM style. You know, of course, this will be a repop. Now this one, it'll come with a new O-ring. This is the actual pump itself. It'll come with a new O-ring for on that. This one came with new hardware, some other O-rings for around the bolts and the bolt holes, a new cap, but you can see the difference. So you can see now our return nipple is way over here instead of over here. So this is going to allow us more room to roll without getting into the block. Should gain us the opportunity to put the recommended belt length. If you think about certain things, when a company such as Allen Grove gives you a recommended belt length, that means they've done this before multiple times, and that is the belt for the most common application that they know will work. And that's where you start with. And we couldn't get ours on because of the tank creating the issue. So we're going to put this all on. We'll get it put back on there and show you what we have going on. We got the belts on. The power steering belt itself is a little tight. Sometimes you have to loosen all the bracket bolts to get that thing to move in even a little further, and then milk it on there. We had to kind of roll the motor over a little bit, but that's kind of what you want, because that belt's going to stretch a little bit and we have very little room for adjustment. So we went with one that was as tight as we could get it to start with. And we have the alternator belt on, and you can see here that the alternator belt also wraps around the power steering pump pulley to have a little extra surface contact. Goes around the crank and the water pump. And then our AC belt just goes back around the compressor, the water pump, and the crank. So we've got all that done so far. And now the next thing we're going to do is we're going to connect all the hoses, the pressure hose and the return hose, get all those connected and tight, and then we'll fill the pump up with some fluid, and then we're just going to manually, without the engine running for a little bit, work it back and forth, get that fluids down in there as much as we can. Then we'll start it, let it fill up the box, and top off the power steering pump. And then after that, we'll be checking for leaks at the same time. And then once all that's said and done, we will go test drive it just here locally, right out front on the street. And after that's all said and done, we're going to take this and go get a front end alignment. And we're going to add just a little bit of caster back in it, because going from the power steering, or going from the manual to the power steering, we want to get that front end alignment corrected for a power steering application. So that's kind of where we are right now, and we'll be finished here before you know it. So we just got back from the front end shop. He just did a traditional alignment and gave it a little bit more caster to help with the power steering as far as when you make a turn for self-correcting. And as you can see here, we got everything all in. Got the power steering pump bracket on, it's all painted. Got the belts wrapped in their correct location. Now again, it did take us a couple times to get the right length belt, just because various applications, depending on where your steering box is located and your pulley diameter. If you're running aluminum pulleys, they may be slightly different diameter, which will give you some more clearance. But since we only have a small amount of clearance here, we had to get a belt that was pretty tight to start with, so that we could adjust it and still have clearance. So we have that done. Alternator belts on, compressor belts all back on. Like I said, we just got back from the front end shop, so we're going to go drive it, make sure everything is kosher as it needs to be and no leaks. Check it for leaks one more time. We haven't had any so far. We'll double check the fluid level after we drive it a little bit more, and then we'll call the customer, tell him it's ready to go.